Stories seem to be fundamental to human existence. Long before many of the modern things that we have in our world today, human beings have told tales to one another in order to make sense of the world around us. It's much easier to remember a story than it is to remember a set of facts. Jesus himself understood this, and so he told a load of stories, which are called parables, in order to tell people what he was coming to do.
Have you ever noticed that so many of the parables start with the phrase, "The kingdom of heaven is like ... The parable of the growing seed in Mark 4:26 or the parable of the workers in the vineyard in Matthew 20 are just two examples of many parables that start this way. This gives us a good idea about what most of the parables are trying to describe. They're not just about morals we should have, although that is the content of some of the stories. They are narrating what Jesus was coming to do, bring God's kingdom to humanity.
Mythologist Joseph Campbell wrote about the hero's journey, and in this kind of analysis of every story, Joseph Campbell argued that every good story is made up of certain characteristics, and the three characteristics that he talks about are the departure, the initiation and the return. And on the hero's journey there are certain other elements that might come into the story. So there might be a companion that joins the hero on their quest, or a mentor figure that comes alongside to help them, or some sort of supernatural aid. Also in every story there's often a big plot twist where the hero will have a moment of failure or maybe even die. But ultimately, every good story, as we know, ends with the hero triumphing and making their world either back to what it was before this adventure took place, or even better than it was before. Okay, so let's pause the video at this point, and we're thinking about the hero and a hero's journey and what Joseph Campbell kind of thought about that. But isn't it interesting how even today, when we take a picture of our lunch, we put it on our story. We call it a story. So story is fundamental, not just to back in the day into ancient tales, but even to us today. So with that thought in mind, let's hand over to Noah, who's going to tell us a little bit more about Joseph Campbell's theories of the hero's journey.
Two examples of Joseph Campbell's hero journeys are Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. The heroes, Luke Skywalker and Frodo Baggins, respond to the call of adventure that was given to them by their mentor figures, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Gandalf. And they rediscover an ancient power, the Force and the Ring. And with them, they confront evil and make their worlds right.
When Joseph Campbell made his theory, he was talking about myths or made-up stories. C.S. Lewis used to have this phrase that Christianity was the true myth. So we need to ask ourselves something. Are all stories, the fact that they have this kind of narrative arc that goes throughout them, is that just by chance? Or is there some sort of golden thread running through every single story that actually represents the story about the way the world is, the story of Jesus that is explained in the Bible? Long before Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, Jesus told one very simple parable that kind of emulates the hero's journey just in a couple of lines. And it's the parable of the mustard seed. Jesus said that although the mustard seed is this tiny, tiny little seed when it first is planted in the ground, when that seed dies, it then grows to become one of the biggest garden plants. And it says that other birds and animals can come and nest in the shelter of its wings and find shelter and food. And on a very kind of micro scale, that's a picture of stories like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, where have you noticed how often the hero comes from an insignificant or a weak background and they go on this journey to become who they were supposed to be, and then they can be that source of shelter for the characters in the story around them because they make their world right once again. So what we're going to be doing over this next series is looking at the different stories that are popular in our culture today, and then looking at some parables that Jesus told and asking that question about this golden thread that runs through every good story. Is it just there by accident? Have we as people made it up? Or is it telling us something deeper about who we are as human beings and about what Jesus came to do by announcing the kingdom of God on earth.